Hello everybody. This next video is going to be titled Choosing a Bloodline. And the topic comes from Hermes Teacher. Thank you, my friend, for your donation. Much appreciated. Uh, choosing a bloodline. Now, the term bloodline, uh, as far as the pit bulls go, means that a family of dogs is either named after the breeder, like Karu, Boudreaux, or it's named after a particular dog, like Bolio or Bully's Son, Dirty Mary, things of that nature. So when you go to choose a bloodline, here's where the PEDs uh, matter. This is where they're important. Now, it's been said all over, which is true. A lot of the PEDs are faked and they're false and misleading, all that stuff, right? But in the past, we could most of the time we could tell just by looking at the dog, the way it was built, head, muzzle, body, like that. And again, in the past, speaking historically, the way the animal performed, that was the bloodline that it was predominantly from, right? So in the case where someone is like that, a breeder is like that, they don't tell you the whole truth. You'd have to look at it like, at least that dog, the dog that you're dealing with, represents the bloodline that it's named after, whether it's the person or the dog. If the PEDs are straight or if they're true, what you want to see is how often that dog is represented in the bloodline. If it's a lot of this stuff will have to be, you'd have to update it, because the dogs of the past, that are far back, they're insignificant, meaning that they may not hold the traits of those particular dogs from the past. If the person doing the breeding has kept those traits, then they will represent the dogs of the past in terms of temperament, behavior, structure, a lot of different traits, whether it's strength, power, speed, whatever, right? So when you look at the pedigree, what you want to see, if you're looking at a particular dog, how is that dog represented in the pedigree? If you're going to call it a particular dog's name, this bloodline is that dog, then he should be, or she should be, represented on both sides of the pedigree, top and bottom, right? If it's not, if it's only on one side and it's something completely different on the other side, that's an outcross. If it's represented heavily on both sides, generally that's inbreeding. If it's more loose, not so heavy, that would generally be line breeding. When it comes to the breeder, if you're going after dogs, or you're trying to acquire dogs from that particular breeder, then that breeder's names should fill the pedigree for at least 3 or 4 generations, right? There might be something else in there that he added that's not from his, say, his inbred dogs or his line bred dogs, but it still represents that breeder because he chose that dog for particular reasons, for particular traits, and he's including them. And that would take some research to see, is he including those dogs because they have the traits that are similar to his dogs that he already has, or is he adding something to enhance what he has, something that has other traits that he's lacking or missing, and he wants to include those in his pedigree. So when you choose a bloodline, first you have to figure out, what bloodlines do you want and why? Again, like I've stressed before, that takes research. The other thing is, what type of breeder they are in terms of how do they care for their dogs. Are the dogs healthy? Do they have a minimum health, bad health issues? Do they have good temperament? Are they more on the very active side, or are they more mellow? So that's what you'd have to do to research a particular bloodline and research the breeder that you're getting the dogs from. What is their reputation like? What dogs have they produced? What dogs do they have that are producers? When you look at the pedigree, you can tell, are these dogs inbred? Are the dogs line bred? Are the dogs outcrossed? Then you have to decide which type of breeding do you want from that particular breeder. Do you want an inbred dog? Do you want an outcrossed dog? Do you want a line bred dog? And why? Are you looking to enter it in legal sports? That would be more possibly of the outcross type. Do you want something that is heavily bred, inbred, because you're going to use it for breeding purposes? You want quote unquote brood stock? Or do you want a line bred dog which will represent the breeder's blood, but not too inbred, which decreases the chance of getting faults? So these are some of the things you want to go for. The pedigree itself will tell you how the dog that you're acquiring is bred. And when you do that, if you haven't made your mind up of do you want an outcross dog, inbred dog, line bred dog, heavy line bred or loose line bred, looking at the pedigree would tell you basically what it is you're getting. And if you're not sure, again, looking at the pedigree will sway your mind one way or the other. Nah, that's too inbred. Yeah, that's too loosely line bred. I want more line bred, or I do want heavily inbred, or I have inbred dogs, so I'm looking for an outcross dog to add to it, which could make when you make a breeding, make that a 3-way cross or a 4-way cross, depending on how the dog is bred that you're getting. If your dogs are tight already and you're looking for an outcross, you may want to get an inbred dog so that when you make your breeding, it's a 50-50 outcross, 2 tight bred lines put together. So again, when you're choosing a bloodlines, you kind of have to have an idea of what it is you're looking for first. When you have that idea in your head, when you understand what traits a particular breeder breeds for, or what traits a particular animal is known for, that's what you're going to search. That's what you're going to go look for. The pedigrees will help you. Making a relationship, having contact with certain people will help you. You can get information from them, and you can also speak with others who have dealt with that person. A lot of times, certain bloodlines, certain families of dogs from certain breeders are not available to the public. So sometimes you're left to just getting what is available or what is made public. And there's nothing wrong with that as long as the dogs you're trying to acquire fit a certain criteria for yourself. First, they have to fit the criteria for the breeder, then they have to fit your criteria, right? You're the one spending the money, or you're making the relationship to trade a dog or get a dog. So you have to take that into consideration too. How much are you willing to spend? If it's a well-known breeder who is known for putting out good dogs, I would suggest you don't haggle the price too much, if at all. That with a lot of people, that's just an insult. If you want it, you pay for it. If it's not in your price range or you don't have the money, then let it go. You can't expect anything, especially if you're getting pups. you cannot expect anything except for a healthy, well-bred dog and a pedigree, right? And a lot of people, even a lot of breeders, even if they do sell dogs to the public, if you come up to them and you start a conversation and you ask the wrong questions, something that makes them nervous, or ask illegal questions or questions about things that are illegal, they're liable to just slam the phone in your ear. There's no reason to do that. Why? Because if you had done your research, a lot of the questions you're asking, you should already know. If you can't find that information, then you're just going on the pedigree and you're going on the health and well-being of the dog you're acquiring. And pedigree means, family history, and how are they putting their dogs together. Generally, if a pedigree is named after a particular dog, then that dog's will be present in the pedigree on both sides in certain spots. It may be where, let's say it's off a particular dog. You may want a son or daughter of that particular dog, or you want a grandson or granddaughter of that particular dog. If it's a direct son, you want to see, or daughter, you want to see if the sire is somewhere else in the pedigree on the bottom side, or even in some cases on an inbred dog on the top side. How many times does that dog appear in the pedigree? And the number of times that a dog appears in a pedigree doesn't ensure quality, doesn't ensure that the individual you're getting represents the traits that particular dog has. Just because you see a dog that's in a pedigree a bunch of times doesn't mean the one you're getting is a representative of that dog. Now, it does increase your chances if the breeder has concentrated on that dog's traits, and what he's doing is moving them forward. So, just as an example, a crazy example, let's say the line bred pup or dog you're getting is line bred heavily on this particular dog, and that particular dog has a certain trait about him that's well known, that's inherent in him and his offspring and progeny, right? If the dog you're getting doesn't have that trait that someone has heavily concentrated on, then he's really not representative of that dog that you're looking for. Same thing with a breeder. If a breeder is known for putting out these types of dogs, regardless of which ones are in the pedigree, then the dog you get should represent the traits that breeder breeds for. If it doesn't, then it's not a representative of that breeder's bloodline. So that's what you should be looking for when you go, when you choose a bloodline, right? First, why are you choosing a particular bloodline? Once you've done your research and you figured out that's what that bloodline is known for, then you decide, do you want it heavily inbred, not so heavily inbred, line bred, loose, or heavily line bred? Or do you want an outcross from that breeder? Do you want a 50-50 outcross, 75-25? Do you want a 3-way outcross, 4-way? Whatever it is, that's what you need to decide before you ever get the dog in the first place. Then, you got to find out what's available. Now, I'll give an example with game fowl guys. And I've probably done this before, but it doesn't hurt repeating it. Certain breeders did not let out their pedigrees. Game fowl breeders like Thomas W. Murphy, right? most people that were involved in that game knew he was a top breeder, a top competitor. He had the record to back it up. A lot of people acquired his birds, but he didn't tell them how they were bred. So in that respect, people didn't care how the dogs were bred as long as it came from Thomas W. Murphy's stock. They were okay with that. And it wasn't just him, it's a lot of breeders like that. That's an accepted practice in game fowl. It's not accepted in the American Pit Bull Terrier. Right? So at the very least, if you look at that situation, at that example, at the very least, let's say somebody played with the pedigrees, they're funny. At the very least, you know you're getting a dog from that person who is known for producing certain kinds of dogs. That much you know. And if you question the pedigree, or if it comes with no pedigree, at least you know it came from that person. And you making your breedings moving forward, you keep track of what that dog produces, what that dog does, what its traits are, and you can keep your pedigree straight after that. That would be about the only way that you could go about it, because if you're going to question everything, or you're not sure every time you get a dog from someone else, or you buy a dog or trade dogs or whatever it is, all you're going to be is frustrated and upset and angry. So the best that you can do is get the dog, you do right by it, and then just let go of what's behind it. Ignore it. Don't even worry about it. As long as you know what you got moving forward, that's good enough. Now, that's the worst case scenario. When you do deal with people that are honest, you know exactly what you're getting. You know exactly what the traits should be. You know exactly what the person has produced and what their record is. And, you're a lot more comfortable with that. Then it's just a matter of seeing if you're happy with the end result. If you breed them, are you happy with the offspring? That's the best scenario, And there's always shady people and everything. But there's a lot of honest dog people too, that represent their dogs honestly, that have integrity. There always has been, So, again, this is a little bit about choosing a bloodline, If you don't know and you're unsure what to get, that's where the research comes in. That's where talking to people. People ask me questions all the time. What is this bloodline known for, and this and that, and how are this guy's dogs? Current people I don't really know too much about, and I don't know anybody who has dogs available that sells dogs or trades any of that stuff. I don't know. But in this respect, all that don't matter, because the standards for acquiring dogs, choosing a bloodline and all that, they're still the same. They'll always be the same. What is it that you like? Where is it available? How much does it cost? And, if you can fill those three, and you're happy with the result, then you're well on your way to feeling like you chose the right bloodline. There's always faders. You're always going to put money into it. All that is acceptable, or should be, and understood that that's what happens. So when you do get good dogs, when you do buy a dog, sometimes it's the person's first dog, they get a good one. Sometimes you got to go through a bunch of them to get a good one. That's standard. And as you progress on, all that will happen to you. Sometimes you'll acquire a dog in the future. Maybe the first dog you got wasn't very good, but you keep doing this over and over. At some point, you're going to start getting dogs, just one, and hey, that was a good dog. Or you got one that's good right off Jump Street, and then later on, some are not so good. One technique a friend of mine used to use is when he'd go get dogs from a breeder, he'd get 2 or 3 or 4 out of the same litter, understanding that they probably aren't going to work out, all of them, and you're lucky if they do, but probably all of them won't work out. But you increase your odds of at least 1 or 2 working out if you do that. So some people will do that. They'll buy more than one pup out of the same litter. Some will buy a grown dog from that breeder and a pup, or a couple of pups and a young dog, a year and a half old. They're thinking about setting themselves up for the future. They have something that's starting to become of age and adult, so they can see the full traits of an adult dog that they acquired in a relatively short time, in a few months or 6 months or a year or whatever. And they have pups from that same breeder coming up behind that dog that in 2 years they'll know fully well if they worked out or not. And it just depends on how much money you have, how much space you have, what you know, what your limitations are. You know, if you can, you might want to acquire 1 or 2 dogs from one breeder and 1 or 2 dogs from another breeder, with the intention of breeding that those two later on after they mature, or even 3 breeders. Or you want this bloodline, that bloodline, and another bloodline all in on your yard, or 2 bloodlines, or you can concentrate on 1 bloodline, even if it's from different breeders. Same bloodline, but different dogs, different traits, or same traits, but they're not directly related. So there's a lot of different ways you can go about it, but you kind of have to have that in your mind beforehand. What do you want to do and which way you want to go with it? So this is a little bit on choosing a bloodline. Again, my buddy Hermes Teacher, thank you for your donation, and more to come.